What's good, everybody? I'm Keandre, this is Intellect, and welcome back to the channel. Now in this video we will talk about a lot of things that went on in Summer League, some of the standouts, some of the people who would be on my All-Summer League teams this year, and a few disappointments towards the end. But first I wanted to talk about some of my experience from actually going to Vegas this year. Now I had initially intended on doing some content throughout the week, but that kind of got thrown off by not getting a credential, which is fine. It just hampered me from doing certain things that I had planned on doing. But I had a good time watching all the games, meeting people. Shout out to my guys from Through the Wire. Got to chop it up with them for a little bit. And I also talked to, plenty of other people, throughout the week. And shout out to everybody who came up to me, said that they watched the videos, heard me on a podcast, or follow me on Twitter or whatever. I appreciate y'all a lot. That was really dope to kind of put some faces to some of your names and Twitter profiles, YouTube comment profiles. So appreciate y'all for that once again. Oh, and shout out to the Blazers for winning the Summer League championship. Definitely not a team that I thought would be able to get it done, especially with Shaedon Sharpe being out, but they did just that. You've got your guys like Trendon Watford, Brandon Williams, Keon Johnson was excellent, Jabari Walker, Greg Brown played a few games, a few others. There's a lot of solid talent on this team, and they ended up getting it done and beat a pretty good and talented Knicks teams with some really good second year players. That's all I have for this little intro I wanted to do before we get into some of the standouts, and let's go ahead and do that right now. Be sure to leave a like and let's do it. Now, starting with Paolo Banchero, when you're the #1 pick, it's not particularly surprising when you play well, but I thought Paolo was really impressive in his 2 games, the first against Jabari Smith in the opener. Now, this is just Summer League, so it's far from the end-all be-all, but he handily outplayed him, hit a ton of shots in numerous places on the floor, made great passes, even those that didn't end up as assists, and just really looked the part as the #1 pick. And then against Keegan Murray and the Kings, he was great outside of the turnovers. He made the game-winning pass, the game-saving block, and had a presence about him that screamed leader and star. Now, I wish he would have played a few more games, especially against Chet and OKC, but that was ultimately the Magic's decision. And when we look back, his performances are definitely among the best and most memorable, getting him on this first team. Now, the guy we just talked about, Keegan Murray, was about as productive as you could possibly be. No extras, nothing really flashy to his game, still not doing a ton of self-creation, but he just finds himself in the right spots at the right times. He attacks and is slowly proving himself to be an absolute knockdown shooter, and if that holds, there's no way he's not a high-level starter in the league for like 10-12 years at the worst. I was very impressed with how he played on both ends. He was one of the best rookies, of course, one of the best overall performers as well. I'm excited to see how he looks with the Kings because though he won't be featured as much, most of the stuff he did and does should work next to those stars very well. Now, Quentin Grimes had a rough shooting game in there, but he was most definitely one of the best players at Summer League. He's taking strides as a ball handler at this level. Obviously, if you know him, he used to be labeled as more of a point guard in high school, but doing more of that, still hitting threes at a high rate, getting to his spots, making plays defensively. He's definitely poised to possibly become a starter level guy in the league very soon. And he's the first of a few second year players on this list who kind of remind me of what Desmond Bane did last year in terms of asserting themselves and taking that next step. Now, Trey Murphy is another one of those guys. Now, the funny thing about Trey is he was statistically about as good last year as a rookie, but some of the creation he was doing this year, his presence and overall comfortability on the wing really impressed me, and I honestly wouldn't be surprised if he did in fact grow an inch or two, and he should be a big part of what New Orleans does going forward. Now, this last spot for the first team was really tough to choose. Now, Cam Thomas was a consistent bucket as expected. The Nets had their ups and downs as a team, definitely had games that resembled a pickup session more than NBA basketball, but Cam is just so unbelievably consistent as a scorer when given that type of freedom. It's kind of wild to watch and look back at over the course of 40 minutes. I don't know the levels he'll eventually reach, but I find it hard to believe he won't be giving some team 15 points off the bench for years to come. I would still love to see him in a situation where he can really get acclimated to attacking quicker and hitting spot ups, but he's pretty much getting 20 plus if you let him play 30 minutes. That's been established. Tari Eason really impressed me, and while it's still just Summer League, I think the Rockets hit a home run getting him at 17, just based on what he brings to the table and his play style. Nothing was particularly pretty, but he was playing great defense in many areas of the floor, continuing to let his instincts and knack for creating events shine. He got to the basket, though he still needs to work on that left hand and finishing with a little more touch. He led Summer League in rebounding and had his moments as a shooter. And while the offense will still likely be a work in progress next year, I think that he can immediately help them out on the wing defensively and really just bring an element that they haven't had. Prior to that last game, Sandro Mamukelashvili was excellent in his summer league performances, and before he was named to the actual first team, I felt like it needed more recognition. 17 a game, 48% from three, made plays all over the court, transition, short rolls in the post, and he was ridiculous against Boston. He was the 54th pick in 2021 and is currently on a two-way, but I can see him getting a full deal next season with how he played. And depending on injuries, he might be an important name for them next season. I'm not sure how much attention it got on social media and everything, but Lindell Wigginton was absolutely one of the best players that I saw. Like Mamu, that last game was a little below the standard from the previous four, but he still averaged over 18 a game, shot about 54 from the field, 46 from three, averaged about 5 assists a game. He's well deserving of this spot, and I think we'll be hearing more from him in the next couple years, even though he's a little older than the rest of these guys. And then Moses Moody had a ridiculous first game, and that alone put him in this conversation. He gave the Knicks 34 points in 3 quarters on just 13 field goal attempts. He was solid against the Celtics in his second game after he took a night off. Boston kind of hit them in the mouth early and they didn't recover, but Moody was for sure a cut above and did a lot of translatable things, as Golden State will rely heavily on the contributions of guys like him and Jonathan Kuminga going forward. The Pacers rookie Ben Mathurin was quietly excellent in Vegas. He didn't do anything particularly flashy outside of that lob off the glass from Duarte, and only played just over 20 minutes a game, but he knocked down threes at a high rate, showed off his athleticism, made some plays off cuts, cleaned some things up on the offensive glass. It was just a really good all-around performance. I like some of the stuff he was doing off the dribble, some of the space creation out on the perimeter, and if you're a Pacers fan, you should definitely be excited about what he did this summer. And lastly, we got to go with Chet Holmgren. While he wasn't nearly as flashy and didn't have the explosive scoring game like he did in Utah, he was still extremely impactful every time he was out there. He averaged about 12, 8, 2, 2, and 2. He showed off his excellent rim protecting abilities, even got called for some goaltends that simply weren't. He made some plays off the bounce, he was efficient, and just played his game in general. All in all, it was a very good summer for the number 2 overall pick, and his defensive impact is going to be felt from the jump, I can just tell. Now to some other standouts and people I feel like we need to talk about. Jabari Smith Jr. didn't shoot it particularly well at all, but he was tremendous on the perimeter defensively and still made a consistent impact there. The Rockets had him doing a lot of things early on that he's simply not very good at right now, and we knew that coming in, but what made it worse was his shot just wasn't falling at all. You could see him getting visibly frustrated at times, but he stayed down and had some better performances as time went on. It'll probably be remembered as him being underwhelming, but all things considered, I thought he was fine. I would still be pretty surprised if he doesn't become a good shooter.
And historically speaking, the answer to that is no.
Now before going down with an injury, Jaden Ivey looked the part as a top 5 pick. That speed is definitely an experience when you're there in person, and even when he'd make some bad reads leading to turnovers or go up without a plan, nobody could really stay in front of him for the 5 quarters that he was out there. I'm very excited to see him out there playing with Cade. The only thing I will say is we gotta get him to figure out how to stay on his feet at some point during his career. Jalen Duren showed off his athleticism, size, and defensive instincts in his first game action with the Pistons. It was an interesting pairing with him and Isaiah Stewart. But if Stu is going to shoot the 3, it could potentially work, at least in short stints. But it was an overall impressive first look at Duren, despite being on that minutes restriction. Now Josh Giddey was initially supposed to play just in the Utah Summer League, at least that's what the initial reports had said, but he switched it up and decided to give it a go a few times in Vegas, and I was not complaining. Watching him pass in person was an absolute experience, and it's crazy what he's aware of without giving any signs of knowing out there on the court. He struggled as a shooter, still has a ways to go as an overall shot creator, but he was really aggressive and still has a lot of time as like the youngest guy on the team. Now the stats weren't all the way there, and I don't want to jump the gun, but it's possible I was even underselling J-Dub, Jalen Williams, and you guys know how much I loved his game coming in. The thing that impressed me most dating back to see him in the combine situation was how effective he was playing off the ball. And that's not saying he was bad in college, he was actually pretty good there, but the man would go minutes without really touching the ball next to Josh Giddey and Trey Mann and still make an obvious impact. And then when he did get opportunities to run the show, you saw the same no looks, some of the great pick and roll reads, and for whatever reason the man was dunking everything and anything that came his way. He'll be an instant contributor for the Thunder next year, I'm pretty sure. Keeping it going, I liked what I saw from Ziaire Williams. He's progressing pretty nicely, in the contrast from his summer league runs last year where he was very much tied to being more of a spot shooter and was noticeably behind physically, and as a ball handler was pretty dope to see. He's rounding out his game more, made a lot of plays for others, plays for himself off the dribble. Josh Christopher was definitely a step above many others as a creator. It was a very good showing from him, and like Ziaire, it's pretty cool to watch the difference a year can make in the summer league performances. Pretty big fan of him coming in, and that remains the case. Jonathan Kuminga had a very rough game coming back from playing internationally, but he bounced back and had some really solid performances, scoring the ball and showing off his ridiculous athleticism. There's a lot of pressure on him to perform next year. I'm not 100% sure that he's as ready as maybe a guy like Moses Moody, but he has the tools to make an impact.
All game, Smitty.
Look at the pro, taking his time. Nice pass.
Now the biggest thing for the former number 2 overall pick James Wiseman was just playing in games, and he did that. He played 4 straight, which was the most since his rookie year. I'm holding out any real analysis until we get to see him with a few more players that'll look his direction and when he's hopefully a little better conditioned, but he did some things as a lob threat, as a screener, shot blocker that Golden State has a lot invested in. Now Keon Johnson with Portland was really impressive to me. The biggest thing was he shot 8 for 20 from 3 over the 4 games. He had some high turnover numbers, but he was making things happen. He's progressing very nicely for them and getting wildly more comfortable with the ball, and it's exciting to see, even through some of the mistakes. Marjon Beauchamp picked up right where he left off in the G League, put up nearly identical stats, to be honest. 14, 4, and 2, shot it well from the floor and from 3, made some big time plays defensively. I think he looks poised to give the Bucks an early boost on the wing and potentially sneak into an all-rookie team as being an early contributor on a very good team, despite not being a big-time creator or a lottery pick. Blake Wesley did not shoot it well overall, but he showed the ability to get past the first level of defense, get 2 feet in the paint, and he made some plays defensively as well. I think he could end up being a very high value pick for San Antonio over the next couple years, being that they got him at 25. And with DeJounte gone, there's a little bit more room for him to possibly explore and get those reps in the NBA. And his teammate Malachi Branham, you know, he had kind of a weird start with Primo out there, kind of sat back and had to figure things out, where on the other hand Wesley was like, hey, I'm here from the jump. But I liked a lot of things that he did as a shot maker and a shooter, and this Spurs rebuild in backcourt should be pretty interesting to watch over the next few years as they figure out sort of a direction. Charlotte's Bryce McGowan was the 40th pick, so with those set of expectations, he was honestly fantastic, and especially against Cleveland, he showed off a lot of his shot making potential. He shot it really well from 3, which I felt like was an easy possibility, and he also continued to get to the basket and the line. He's a work in progress overall, but I think this was a pretty great starting point for him. Out of Memphis, we got to talk about Kenny Lofton Jr. He's a really fun player, and even more than that, he really has a chance to navigate his way into a role in the league eventually. Obviously, the post-ups won't be in the same abundance as this setting, and he'll need to continue adding the 3-ball, keep working defensively, but he's a playmaker in every way, just good at basketball to keep it simple. And Memphis is a great spot for him, so I'm hoping it works out there. And his teammate David Roddy was very good. Now, he had some up and down games, but he got better quickly, impacted many facets of the game, made some plays, knocked down threes, showed off his athleticism, and held up defensively better than I expected. So overall, he really did look the part as a first-round pick. Celtics point guard J.D. Davison had some decent games, and then in his last 2, he absolutely exploded. Put up 45 points, 20 assists, and 11 rebounds, hit 5 threes there too. Set a summer league record for total assists with 41. I don't really see a pathway for him with the runner-up Celtics, but this was an excellent showing for the former Alabama guard. I might have mentioned it last year, but Isaiah Joe was immediately one of the best shooters I think I've ever seen up close, and he showed it off once again, along with some other parts of his game. If he's not in Philly's rotation this year, I'm positive he'll end up in one somewhere in due time. Toronto's Delano Banton did a lot of good things, especially as a shooter. That's always been a big swing skill for him, and he hit several threes in a variety of spots on the floor, in addition to controlling the pace and setting up his teammates in a big way. A lot of potential for him to keep building off of this. Ochai Agbaji and RJ Nembhard were both good for Cleveland in their own ways. Nembhard looks like he'll find a place in the league at some point soon, and Ochai did a very good job of knocking down threes, making a few impressive plays for himself. I still have my reservations about him going 14th, but he'll fit in and make an impact alongside Garland, Mobley, and Allen. I have no doubts about that. Dalen Terry certainly brought the energy. He was actually quite a bit bigger in person than I expected. Right now, I think he'll fit in best as a wing rather than a guard with the Bulls. He still has some things to work on as a ball handler, but defensively and as a passing connector, he'll make an impact. He found his way to the bucket more often than I expected. Now, Jaden Hardy had a terrific start with a 28-point performance against Chicago, but things tailed off a bit after that, and I can't say the inconsistency wasn't somewhat expected. He's still got a ton of potential as a shooter, shot maker, overall playmaker, but I really want to see him in a situation where he can embrace more of an off-ball complementary role, whether that be in the G League or if he can somehow earn some early spot minutes with the Mavericks. After not playing too much and having some quiet performances, John Butler couldn't miss in his last game, going for 25 points, 9 and 9 from the field, 6 threes. He's a project, but in my opinion, worthy of having way more interest in than it seems like he's had so far. 7'1" wing, fluid mover, high level 3-and-D potential. Wildly skinny, but to me, there's no reason he shouldn't be valued somewhere. Now, a few more of the sort of unheralded ones. Jabari Walker was the 57th pick for the Portland Trail Blazers, but he honestly played like a first rounder. I thought he should have been playing more minutes from the jump because he made an instant impact. He ended up getting signed to a longer term deal because of his play. He knocked down threes, made an impact defensively everywhere, manned the glass. There's definite potential to contribute in the coming years for Portland there with him. Keon Ellis went undrafted, picked up by the Kings, but still managed to be big time for them. He actually banked in that 3 in their furious comeback against Orlando. His 3-and-D ability was there for sure. I think he'll spend some time in the G League this year, maybe a little next, and he still needs to work on his body some, but I think he has impact player written all over him. And then a guy like Tyrese Martin with Atlanta, he had a late rise in the draft convos, but he was rock solid in many games for Atlanta, was really their best player, and still feels a lot like this year's Aaron Wiggins down to the Summer League performance. And he impressed me with some of his crossovers and overall ball handling ability in Vegas. Others that we didn't talk about in detail, Cole Swider with the Lakers, knockdown shooter, really impressive, definitely deserving of that two-way. Scottie Pippen Jr. did a lot of great things, kind of looked like that classic undrafted two-way guard that kind of figures it out, pretty disruptive defensively and got downhill, set his teammates up pretty well. Tommy Kuzi with the Magic, didn't play the first couple of Magic games, but once he got his opportunity, he made the most of it. Did a lot of the same things that we saw from him at St. Mary's. Jarek Harding with the Mavericks had some big time performances. Josh Minot with the Timberwolves showed some of that reason that you had some people saying he had like that first round type of potential. I think we can all agree that he should have been more involved last year. With Memphis, AJ Lawson did his thing for the Mavs. I think he'll get a roster spot somewhere with his athleticism, the defensive impact, and if he can continue to shoot the ball in this capacity, I think it'll be very easily for him to find a spot. Also, shout out to second-year standouts like Juhan Begaron, Jericho Sims, Deuce McBride, David Duke, Santi Aldama, Marko Simonovic, and Trendon Watford. The last 3 actually made the second team for the official NBA list. We just didn't have time to talk about them in detail. Now I wanted to talk about a few disappointments before we get out of here. Now, the injuries kind of stole the show in a way. You had Shaedon Sharpe getting hurt on the first night, which was kind of worst case scenario for a guy coming from the situation that he is. You had Dyson Daniels turning his ankle, EJ Liddell, leaving with a knee injury, coming back, tearing his ACL, which was super unfortunate. Speedy recovery to him, especially being a second round pick in his whole situation that he's in. You had Jaden Ivey turning his ankle on the 3-point shot. Oh, AJ Griffin, of course, too, him being out, and a few others that I might be forgetting, but that was, a big thing that happened this year in Summer League. I think that, one of the bigger players that I was expecting a little more from, especially from a second-year guy, is Sharif Cooper. Now, I still have, some hope and some optimism for him going forward, just given that, a few months ago, even, it wasn't even like a long time ago, him being in the G League, he performed pretty well, and especially down the stretch of the season, he got better and, had some big-time performances against some other solid G League teams, but that was not the case. He didn't shoot the ball well, had a lot of turnovers, the confidence just didn't seem there. Now, I know he was dealing with an injury, at least that's what the reports say, but it'll be interesting to see where he goes from here, especially going into the G League and kind of the clock that ticks when you are somebody who is on a two-way and the kind of pace that the NBA moves with. Johnny Davis, 10th pick to the Washington Wizards. The shot creation and the space creation is still definitely a work in progress for him, and he just kind of looked uncomfortable in a lot of ways, wasn't able to like really make an impact or find his niche, even with the shot not falling. And not the best performance from him, but he was the 10th pick for a reason, and we'll just have to keep watching what he does there. That's really gonna do it for this video. I appreciate y'all for watching, especially if you made it all the way to this point. There's a lot more content coming soon. We have the 23 early big board coming up. I love this class. Been doing a lot of research and stuff, through this week, even back in Summer League, to get ready for this video and this next draft and everything. And then we will have, different breakdowns on, rookies from last year. I'm thinking to do some ideas on some of the most improved stuff that we did in the past. I really like doing those videos, focusing on some of the potential breakout candidates for the next season, and then some other stuff along the way. But yeah, that's all I've got for this one. If you did enjoy, please be sure to leave a like, subscribe if you are new, and comment down below some of your thoughts on Summer League and everything in between. I'm Keandre, this is Hoop Intellect, and I'm out.
I need mine up front, no ifs, ands, or buts. Tap in if you really bout it. I can be your motivation, I can be the one you call at the late nights on the grind.